0 hour is still 3 minutes away, and the night is already shaking. You are crouched in a fire base south of Wheatsheet Village with the 36th Ulster Division, helmet pressed to the chalky parapet, heart hammering so hard you feel in your teeth. The air tastes of wet clay and fear. Somewhere behind you, 19 massive mines, each packed with up to 96,000 pounds of ammo, are waiting for a single spark from a Royal Engineers officer named Captain Henry Hudspeth. 3 hours, 9 minutes, and 40 seconds. 3 hours, 9 minutes, and 50 seconds. 3:10 exactly. The world ends. A sheet of orange-white fire rips upward along the entire ridge. Brighter than noon, bright enough to cast shadows behind your eyeballs, even though they're squeezed shut. The ground beneath your boots rises like a living thing, lifts you 6 inches off the duckboards, then slams you back down. A roar follows that is not sound but pure violence. It punches the breath from your lungs, turns screams into silence, makes the darkness itself feel bruised. Then the debris begins to fall. Clods of Flanders earth the size of motor cars, shattered tree trunks, fragments of men who were standing on the German front line a heartbeat earlier. A severed hand lands beside Private Tommy Irvine's boot. He stares at it, numb, until someone drags him forward. The mines have done their work. Where the German front line used to be, there is now a chain of smoking craters, each one 100 yards across, overlapping like the teeth of some prehistoric monster. The ridge is unrecognizable. Hill 63 is simply gone. In its place, a ragged moonscape lit by burning timber and the pale magnesium glow of very lights that no one remembers firing. Whistles blow. The creeping barrage crashes down exactly on the minute, a moving wall of high explosive and shrapnel that walks forward at 100 yards every 3 minutes. Over go the first waves. New Zealanders on the left, Irish in the center, Australians on the right. They move almost unopposed. The few Germans who crawl out of the rubble are dazed, bleeding from ears and noses, hands already raised. Some simply sit and stare at the sky as if waiting for it to fall a second time. By 3:40 the British are across the old no-man's land and dropping into what used to be the German support line. Except it isn't a line. It's a staircase. Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Carleton of the 9th Royal Irish Fusiliers is one of the first officers down the steps. He expects the usual shallow scrape, perhaps a dugout or two. Instead, he finds a concrete doorway framed in timber, a steel door hanging half off its hinges, and beyond it, electric light. A string of bare bulbs, still glowing, swaying gently from the concussion. Carleton steps inside. The others crowd behind him. Lien feels lowered but forgotten. The tunnel is 8 feet high, 6 feet wide, plank-lined floor, walls painted pale green. A telephone cable runs neatly along the ceiling. There's a faint smell of coffee and cigarette smoke. A sign in Gothic script reads, Rauchen verboten, aber Lieutenant von Tutschek. Someone has left half a cup of real coffee on a map table. It is still warm. Carleton's mouth actually falls open. A sergeant behind him whispers the words every man is thinking. Bloody hell, they've been living like lords. They follow the tunnel deeper. It slopes gently downward, branching left and right like the corridors of a London underground station. Ventilation pipes hum softly. Every 20 yards, another steel door. Behind one, a dormitory with iron bunk beds, wool blankets, framed photographs of wives and children pinned above each pillow. Behind another, a kitchen with a cast-iron stove still ticking as it cools, a string of real sausages hanging from a hook. And then they reach the command bunker. A single flight of concrete steps descends 30 feet into the earth. At the bottom, a room the size of a small church hall. Walls 2 meters thick, reinforced with railway rails. A switchboard with 20 lines. A map table the length of a billiard table. And on the walls, wallpaper. Actual floral wallpaper. Pink and cream, curling slightly at the corners from the damp. Captain Robert Graves, yes, that Robert Graves, attached to the 2nd Royal Welsh Fusiliers, steps inside and laughs once, a short, incredulous bark. We've been sleeping in waterlogged rat holes for 3 years, and these bastards have bloody wallpaper. No one answers him. They are too busy staring at the electric generator still chugging quietly in its own side chamber, at the pump that delivers running water to a row of enamel basins, at the neatly typed duty roster that ends with the words July 6, 17, Bereitschaft at 3 o'clock, or Stand to at 3 o'clock, the same hour the world ended for them. Somewhere far above, the battle rages on toward Messines village itself. But down here, 30 feet beneath a ridge that no longer exists, a dozen British officers stand in stunned silence inside an underground palace their enemy built while they were dying in the mud. And in that moment, every one of them realizes the same terrifying truth. If this is what the German second line looks like, what the hell have they built further back? The generator's low thrum is the only sound in the wallpapered bunker. Captain Robert Graves reaches out and touches the pink roses printed on the wall, as if checking they're real. His fingers come away clean, no mud, no lice, just faint dust. Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Carleton stands frozen beside the map table, staring at a half-finished game of scat. 3 cards still face down, a cigarette stub balanced on the edge of an ashtray. A German voice suddenly crackles from a field telephone. Hello? Halley 7? Antwerpen Sea Dock. The operator on the other end has no idea his world has already ended. Carleton gently lifts the receiver, listens for a second, then places it back. No one speaks German well enough to answer, and no one wants to break the spell. They move deeper. Steel doors open onto wonders that belong in a London suburb, not 40 yards behind what used to be the German front line. A sick bay. 6 proper iron beds with white sheets, a medicine cabinet with real morphine ampoules, a porcelain sink fed by a brass tap that still works. A sergeant from Belfast turns the tap, and water gushes out, clear and cold. He lets it run over his filthy hands, watching the mud swirl away, then looks up with something close to tears. 3 years I've not seen a tap, he whispers. In the next chamber, a battalion headquarters with typed orders pinned under glass, a barometer, a wind-up gramophone, and a stack of records, one still on the turntable. Strauss's Blue Danube. Private Irvine, the same man who saw the severed hand an hour ago, lifts the needle and the ghostly waltz fills the bunker. Someone immediately tells him to shut it off. The silence that follows feels heavier than the mines. Word spreads upward to the captured ridge faster than runners can carry it. Men who should be consolidating shell holes instead drift rearward in 2s and 3s, drawn by the impossible rumor. Fritz has bloody palaces down there. By 7 o'clock the tunnels are clogged with sightseers in mudcake khaki. A company cook from the 16th Irish Division finds the officers' mess. Long tables laid with white oilcloth, a menu chalked on a board, Eintopf für meine Würstchen, real china plates, even salt cellars. He sits down in a stunned daze and is discovered 20 minutes later still sitting there, turning a china cup round and round in his cracked hands. Major Bernard Montgomery, yes, that Montgomery, then a staff captain with the 47th Division, storms in, furious at the lack of discipline, takes one look at the electric lights and the wallpaper, and the anger dies in his throat. He simply mutters, "My God," and walks out again. The deeper they go, the worse it gets. A narrow-gauge railway runs on rubber-tired wheels silent, straight into the hillside, disappearing into blackness. Engineers follow for 200 yards and find a cavernous ammunition depot. Thousands of shells stacked on pallets, each one individually wrapped in grease paper, fuses in separate boxes labeled like fine wine. Beside it, a dormitory for 400 men, tiered bunks, central heating from a coal boiler that still glows red. Ventilation shafts rise invisibly to camouflaged exits on the reverse slope. One tunnel even has a sign in neat red paint. Zoom Latrin block 150M with an arrow. The British follow it and find a flush lavatory with 6 porcelain bowls, an assistant fed by rainwater tanks on the surface. A corporal from Liverpool actually laughs out loud, a high, broken sound. We've been shitting in biscuit tins for 3 years, and these bastards have a proper bog. By noon, the entire Messines wedge-shaped complex has revealed itself as something no British intelligence officer ever imagined. Not trenches, not even fortified lines, but an underground city. Over 2,000 meters of interconnected galleries, 25 deep dugouts capable of housing an entire battalion in comfort, electric light throughout, telephone exchange, hospital with x-ray room. Yes, an actual x-ray machine. even a small chapel with a harmonium and a painted altarpiece of the Virgin. The commanding officer's quarters include a private bathroom with a hip bath and a gas-heated water cylinder. On his desk lies an open letter in mid-sentence. Uendi wendai Tommies common, solen sich wundern, and when the Tommies come, they shall be astonished. The writer will never finish it. And everywhere the same stunned British faces. Hardened veterans who laughed at shellfire now wander speechless, touching walls, opening drawers, lifting photographs of German wives as if they belonged to another species. One Ulster man finds a child's drawing pinned above a bunk, stick figures, a house, the words "Verwehte in der Front," and suddenly sits down on the floor and cries like a baby. Another discovers a cupboard full of real coffee beans and just stands there smelling the open jar, eyes closed for 5 full minutes. The contrast is unbearable. Above ground, the British trenches are shallow ditches full of corpses and rainwater. 30 feet below, the enemy has been living in electric-lit, warm, dry civilization while lobbing shells at men who thought deep dugout meant 10 feet of wet timber and hope. Captain Graves finally finds his voice again. He turns to Carlton in the wallpaper command room and says a sentence every man up and down the ridge is thinking. If this is their second line, what the hell is waiting for us at Passchendaele? Because the maps on the table show tunnels running east, deeper, stronger, hundreds more just like this one, some marked Flander and Eistellung, others Flander and 2, and one chilling red line labeled simply Siegfried. And for the first time since the Somme, British soldiers feel something colder than fear. They feel small. The feeling of being small settles over the captured ridge like a second, heavier bombardment. By late afternoon on the 7th, the battle is technically won. Messines village taken, Whitsheet in British hands. 7,000 prisoners shuffling rearward with stunned faces of their own. Yet no one is celebrating. The usual post-victory racket, backslapping, rum issue, songs never starts. Instead, small groups of khaki figures keep disappearing underground, drawn back to the tunnels again and again, as if they need to keep checking that the wallpaper, the flush toilets, the electric lights are still there. Sergeant Major Frank Buckley of the 11th Royal Irish Rifles finds men just sitting on the German bunks, staring at nothing. He tries to chivvy them out. "Come on, lads, Jerry's on the run." No one moves. One private finally looks up and says quietly, "We're the ones who've been on the run, Sergeant Major, for 3 bloody years." That night the first letters home begin. They are not the usual cheery lies. Private Tommy Irvine writes to his mother in Belfast on the back of a captured German paybook. "We took the ridge today with the biggest bang you ever heard. But, ma'am, you'll never believe what we found underneath. They had houses down there, proper houses, electric light, and hot water, and wallpaper like the parlor at home. I sat on a real chair and cried like a wee boy because I couldn't remember what a chair felt like." He does not mention that he stole a single pink rose from the wallpaper, folded it flat, and keeps it inside his paybook next to a photo of his girl. Hundreds of similar letters leave the ridge that week, carried rearward by wounded men, by supply lorries, by anyone heading for Blighty. Within days, the phrase German palaces is on every tongue from Etaples to Edinburgh. On the 8th, General Plumer himself, Old Plum, the soldier's favorite, comes forward to see what all the whispering is about. He descends the concrete stairs at wedge shape with his staff trailing behind like schoolboys. The old man, 59, face carved from teak, walks slowly through the tunnels, hands clasped behind his back, saying nothing. In the officer's mess, he stops in front of the chalked menu board, reads, "Eintopf in my tea Wurstchen," and suddenly looks very tired. His ADC, Captain Charteris, hears him mutter, "All this while we were asking men to live in sewers." Plumer spends 40 minutes underground, longer than anyone expected. When he climbs back into the daylight, he squints at the sun as if he has forgotten what it looks like. He issues no orders, makes no speech. He simply gets back into his car and drives away. The staff officers who were with him never speak of what he said in the tunnel. But from that day forward, Plumer's plans carry a new, grim urgency. The shock begins to turn into something darker. Men start measuring. A Royal Engineer lieutenant named Tudor calculates that the concrete alone in one bunker would have roofed 50 British frontline dugouts. Another officer counts the light bulbs, over 400 still working, and realizes each one represents a comfort British troops have not seen since 1914. The arithmetic is brutal. Every sausage on the hook, every bar of real soap, every roll of German toilet paper feels like a personal accusation. In one dormitory, a lance corporal from Liverpool finds a diary open to June 6. The last entry reads, "Tomorrow the Tommies try again. Let them come. We are safe 50 fuss under the earth and have fresh bread." The lance corporal tears the page out, folds it small and keeps it. He will carry it all the way to Passchendaele, and on the morning he dies in the mud, he will still have it in his breast pocket. By the 10th, the newspapers back home are crowing about the greatest victory since the Marne, but the men who actually took the ridge are quiet. When fresh drafts arrive, boys straight from England, pink-cheeked and eager, the veterans show them the tunnels in silence. No jokes, no tall stories. Just a slow walk through the electric-lit corridors, past the wallpaper and the flushed toilets, until the newcomers understand why no one is smiling. One 18-year-old from the 19th Division emerges white-faced and asks, "Why didn't we know they could build like this?" The only answer he gets is a bitter laugh and the same question thrown back. Why do you think Haig kept throwing us at them with nothing but bayonets and prayers? And beneath the laughter, anger begins to coil. Not the clean anger of battle. This is colder, slower, poisonous. Men who saluted without thinking now pause half a second when an officer passes. Conversations in the estaminets behind the lines turn to muttered questions. If the Germans can build underground cities, why are we still told there's no timber for duckboards? If they have electric light, why do we ruin our eyes reading letters by candle stubs? The word wasted starts appearing in letters home, wasted lives, wasted years, wasted hope. A rumor sweeps the BF that some staff colonel suggested stripping the German wiring for British use and was told it's needed for the next show. No one can prove it, but everyone believes it. On June 12th, 5 days after the mines, a party of war correspondents is finally allowed forward. They descend with notebooks ready for heroic tales and emerge strangely subdued. One of them, Philip Gibbs, writes a dispatch that will never see print. We have captured something more terrible than a ridge. We have captured proof of how far behind we are, not just in guns or shells, but in everything that keeps men human. His editor cables back. Too depressing. Send victory stuff. Gibbs burns the article in a brazier and watches the pink wallpaper roses curl black in flames. But the soldiers do not need correspondents to tell them what they have seen. They have seen the future the enemy built while they were dying in the past. And somewhere in the back of every mind on Messines Ridge, that week is the same whispered question. If this was only their second line, what kind of hell are they waiting for us in next? The question does not stay whispered for long. By the middle of June, it is shouted in the estaminets, scrawled on latrine walls, carved into stocks of Lien fields. If Messines was only the appetizer, what's the main course? Men who survived the ridge begin to talk about the next show the way men once talked about Execution Day. Leave trains pull out a potpourri packed with pale, silent veterans clutching souvenirs, a strip of German wallpaper, a light switch, a porcelain lavatory chain, like proof they did not dream it. In London, mothers open envelopes and red lines that chill the blood. Tell the politicians come see where Jerry lives before they send us at him again. One Ulster private mails home an entire roll of the pink floor wallpaper. His sister uses it to paper her scullery and cries every time she washes dishes. Back in Flanders, the preparations for that next show are already grinding forward with the relentless rhythm of a slaughterhouse conveyor. Haig has decided the ridge was just the opening act. The real prize is still the high ground beyond Ypres, the ridges that guard the Channel ports. On June 25th, Plumer warns him in private that the Germans have spent 3 years turning the whole salient into one vast Messines. Only deeper, stronger, wetter. Haig listens, nods, and signs the order anyway. The new offensive will begin on July 31st. It will be called 3rd Ypres. The soldiers call it Passchendaele before a single gun is fired, because the name tastes like death already. And the men who walk the underground palaces know exactly what is waiting. Captured German prisoners, some of them engineers who helped pour the concrete, talk freely now that the game is up. They describe the Flanders and Stellung. Pillboxes 2 stories deep, tunnels wide enough for hospital trains, command posts 60 feet down with armored cupolas, entire artillery batteries mounted on rails, so they can disappear underground between shots. One Oberleutnant, still furious at losing his comfortable billet, boasts to his guards, "You took Messines with your mines. Try taking Langmark with rifles." The guards do not beat him. They simply look at each other and feel the old familiar dread settle in their stomachs like cold lead. The word spreads up the chain until even brigade staffs are whispering it. The Germans have turned the whole of Flanders into a subterranean fortress city, while the British were still arguing about how many duckboards a battalion was allowed. By mid-July, the contrast is no longer shocking. It is obscene. Fresh divisions moving up to the salient march past supply dumps where British soldiers are still issued 1915 pattern shovels, short-handled, useless in clay, while German prisoners are marched the other way wearing leather jerkins and carrying brand-new entrenching tools with folding handles. Rain begins on July 27th and turns a low ground into a swamp overnight. Men who once dreamed of a dry dugout now wade waist-deep in water that stinks of corpses and cordite. They pass shattered pillboxes, only the ones the artillery managed to hit, and peer inside to find the same story. Electric light, ventilation fans, even little signs saying "Nicht rauchen," Sprengstoff. And every time they see it, the anger hardens a little more. A sergeant major from the 18th Division is heard telling his company, "Remember Messines, lads. Remember the wallpaper. That's what they think of us. Now let's go give it back to the bastards." On the night of July 30th, the rain stops just long enough for the preliminary bombardment to begin. 2,300 guns, from million shells, the loudest noise in human history until then. From the German side, it looks like the end of the world. From the British side, it feels like screaming into a pillow. Intelligence officers watching through captured periscopes report no visible damage to the main German concrete belt. One of them, Captain Jack, turns to his colonel and says a sentence no one wants to hear. "They're all underground, sir. Our shells are just redecorating the garden." The colonel does not answer. He is thinking about wallpaper. At 3:50 a.m. on July 31st, the whistles blow again. Another ridge. Another great push. Another few thousand men told to walk forward into machine guns they now know are served by men sitting warm and dry 30, 40, 50 feet beneath the mud. As the leading waves of the 15th Scottish and 55th West Lancashire divisions fix bayonets in the dark, a private from Liverpool, still carrying a strip of pink wallpaper in his breast pocket, turns to the man beside him and says very calmly, "Tell you what, mate, if we get through this one, I'm going to find whoever built those bloody palaces, and I'm going to make him live in a British trench for a week." The barrage lifts. They go over the top. And somewhere far below, behind meters of reinforced concrete, a German generator hums contentedly. Electric bulbs glow on pink wallpaper, and men who have everything wait for men who have nothing to come and die in the rain. They go over the top into a world that has forgotten the sun. The rain has come back with vengeance, turning the salient into a single gray-brown sea. Every shell crater is a pond, every track canal, every man a drowning scarecrow. The first waves vanish almost immediately, swallowed by mud, cut down by Maxims that chatter from slits invisible behind the downpour. By noon on the 31st, the attack has already failed, yet the orders keep coming. Reinforce failure, push again, take the ridge that no longer exists above ground. Men who saw the palaces at Messines now wade through this swamp, carrying the memory like a burning coal in the chest. Week after week, the same ritual. A new bombardment that churns the earth into deeper soup. A new whistle. A new line of khaki figures rising from the muck and walking forward because there is nothing else to do. They pass the skeletons of tanks belly up in craters, the corpses of the last wave already half submerged, faces black with peat and rain. And always the knowledge, sharp as barbed wire. Somewhere under their boots, 30, 40, 60 feet down, the enemy sits warm and dry, drinking real coffee, writing letters home on tables covered with oilcloth, sleeping between clean sheets while British soldiers drown standing up. The anger mutates into something colder. Fatalism. Men stop writing cheerful letters. They stop writing at all. A private from the 47th London Division is found dead in a shell hole with his paybook open. Inside, he has drawn a careful sketch of the Messines bunker, complete with wallpaper roses, and underneath a single line, "This is where they are. We are here." Another soldier, wounded for the third time, refuses morphine at the dressing station and instead keeps repeating, "Tell them about the wallpaper. Tell them." The medical officer finally writes on man's tag, "Delirious wallpaper." The man dies on the operating table, still trying to say it. In September, the Canadians arrive to try where everyone else has bled out. They are fresh, tough, proud. Veterans from Messines take them to one of the few captured pillboxes still above ground and make them look inside. Electric wires still dangling, a light bulb miraculously unbroken, a calendar open to July. The Canadians laugh at first, nervous, disbelieving laughter. Then they stop laughing. A Nova Scotian sergeant runs his hand over the smooth concrete and says quietly, "My brother died at the Somme, a hole I wouldn't put a dog in. And this is what they gave the bastards who killed him." That night the Canadians go forward with a new ferocity, but the mud and the hidden guns do not care about anger. They take the ground inch by inch, corpse by corpse. October brings the final pushes. The ridge, what is left of it, finally falls on November 6th after 127 days and 250,000 British Empire casualties. The village of Passchendaele is a name on a map and nothing more. 3 ruined walls and a sea of flooded craters. Men stand on objective and look around at a landscape scraped raw by shells, every feature erased, every tree reduced to a splintered stump. And still the knowledge gnaws. Beneath their boots, the German underground city is largely intact. Most of the men who lived in it simply walked away down tunnels the British never found, taking their wallpaper and their coffee pots with them. When the survivors come down from the line, they are changed in ways no one can name. They do not cheer. They do not sing. They move like old men, eyes fixed on nothing. In the estaminets behind Popering they sit in silence, nursing one small beer for hours. If a new draft starts boasting about giving Jerry a taste of cold steel, the Passchendaele veterans simply look at them until boys fall quiet. Then one of the old hands will reach into his pocket and pull out a creased scrap of pink wallpaper, lay it on the table without a word, and the conversation ends. Years later, long after the war, men who were there will still wake from nightmares of drowning in mud, while somewhere far below, electric lights glow on floor walls and a gramophone plays Strauss. They will never quite forgive the country that sent them forward with 1914 rifles against an enemy living in 1930. And in quiet moments, in working men's clubs from Belfast to Brisbane, someone will still take out a faded square of wallpaper, turn it over in cracked hands, and say the only sentence that ever needed saying. "We took the ridge. They kept the world." Yendi.